Hello, Lucy here. Just to let you know that part 1 and 2 of the full episode with Kate Wadsworth are now live on YouTube. Head over to the Wilderness of Creativity channel, hit subscribe and watch the full episode. With nearly 26,000 views, a growing tribe of subscribers and Series 1 on the way, it's the place to be. See you there. When did learning become a race against time or a series of stressful tests? What if we could transform that experience? Welcome to this week's episode of The Wilderness of Creativity, and today I'm talking to a very special guest, Kate Wadsworth. Kate is an educator on a mission to make learning happier, less stressful and more relevant for everyone. Not content to wait for systematic change, she has passionately sought ways to create positive change independently. As a teacher, international consultant, education coach and now author, her fresh perspective advocates for playful, creative, curious and kind learning experiences that benefit both educators and children alike. Right, let's get to the episode.
Yeah, so I start my days ordinarily with a coffee, always. First little advertisement plug that's not actually an advertisement because I don't have any sort of affiliation with them, but there's a company called Exhale Coffee. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
It rings a bell.
They create the most exceptional coffee, and I didn't used to be a coffee drinker, and then I started drinking their coffee, and it is just the best. And it's really research based around, being quite healthy. And there's the chap who started the company, I think, had an autoimmune condition.
Yeah.
It's all on the website, and coffee was one of his pleasures, and he didn't want to lose it. So they've created this coffee brand that's really, and I just love the whole backstory. So my day always starts with an exhale coffee, and then kids.
Yeah.
So both kids and getting ready for school and getting organised for the day and that sort of thing. But I love mornings. I find the mornings, we get up early so that we've got enough time without rushing, and
Yeah.
I really like a nice calm start to the day.
Yeah, I do as well. If I've got time, I will do some of my yoga or I will sit and read. And I think those sort of rituals that we have for ourselves can help set up a calmer, relaxed, more purposeful, intentional day, rather than kind of rushing around. And it doesn't always work like that. Let's be realistic. Kids are unpredictable. But with having those intentions for you and your family, I think really help. If you wouldn't mind, if you want to take us back a little bit to how you started What If Education, like what has taking the road less travelled looked like for you?
I love that question. The reason why I love that question is because it really felt like that at the beginning. It felt very a solo endeavour. And what's happened over time is I've met so many people like yourselves who are doing amazing things in this education space that are really in line with my values and how I would love to see the education space evolving. And it's absolutely, it isn't a road less travelled in the end, but it did feel like that at the start. And that was 3 years ago. And that journey started with a deep feeling. I'm a teacher. So I'd been in teaching for 20 years by the time that I decided to leave the classroom for a while. And it started with a deep feeling that the way we were providing education wasn't serving children or educators, and that it was just rumbling on and on and on with very few solutions to the problems we were facing, and a sort of a feeling of apathy around, well, this is just how it is, and it just has to be this way, and we don't have a choice. And I just couldn't sit with that. And I thought, what if it wasn't like that? What if we could do things differently? What if we could look at learning differently? And what if we could find a way that education's happier, less stressful and more relevant? And that question just got louder and louder and louder, until essentially it was a case of, right, I've got to go start finding out the answers to some of these what if questions.
How did your colleagues, your friends, your
Mm.
family
Yeah.
react to you wanting to step away from, let's face it, a very stable, very secure career? You know, we're sucked into that, aren't we?
Yes, we are. And it wasn't easy. It was hard in lots of ways. It felt a little bit like a grief when I left. And the reason for that is because I'd felt my entire life I'd always wanted to be a teacher. So when I was younger, I always joke that I started my teacher training at 4 when I was teaching Teddies and Sisters. And that I never had any point in my life where I didn't know what I wanted to do. Everything I did was always vocational. It was always about getting the best GCSEs to be a teacher, the A levels I needed to get into teacher training college, and so on and so forth. And then I went into teaching and loved it in lots of ways, although I have to say it changed beyond all recognition from when I started 20 years ago to what it looked like 3 years ago when I left. I mean, it's just not the same job. But it felt a bit like a loss because I lost my identity. And, I was so used to, well, what do you do for a job? I'm a teacher. Oh, well, I'm not now. What am I now? Yeah. And so I had an amazingly supportive family around me who could see that actually it was making me quite unwell to carry on doing it like I was doing it. And I've done a lot of work since I left on values. And I can now confidently say that the reason I was becoming emotionally and physically unwell was because I was working so far outside of my values. I didn't realize that's what it was at the time, but it was. And now I look back and I can see every single value getting challenged. But I had a family around me who could see, no, this isn't good. And my friends the same. And just the most wonderful set of colleagues at the school I worked at as well, who were experiencing similar challenges as nearly every educator in the country is. So it's been wonderful in that I've just had so much support and care and love from people around me going, yeah, come on, let's start asking these questions and let's find a way forward. So yeah, very lucky for that.
You know, when you talk about those values, what were you working outside of?
So my core values are simplicity. I value simplicity enormously. And funnily enough, we talked at the very beginning of this conversation about my background being really, and I value simplicity because I think that's where so many answers to challenges lie when we make things extraordinarily more complex than they need to be. And I think so much happens in education that it doesn't serve children and doesn't serve educators because of complexity that just doesn't need to exist. And everything felt very hard and very complicated and very convoluted. And so that simplicity that I could see, well, if we just do it like this, what if we do it like this? And it couldn't break through.
Yeah.
So I felt like that was constantly challenged. This is harder than it needs to be. And then fairness. And for me, fairness is very much around, it's absolute fairness. So not necessarily what's in my favour, but what's fair and right to the young people we're educating, to the educators who are providing the education, to the families who are sending their children to our schools. And I looked at all three of those and it didn't feel fair. And that was a challenge to me. And then my final one is fun. And if there is laughter and joy and happiness in whatever I'm doing, we can make it work. And to some degree, trying to make education fun that final year felt impossible. And I thought, well, no, that's wrong. It didn't feel impossible. It felt too complicated. It didn't feel fair. And it was such a challenge and an uphill swim. And it still wasn't enough. And I thought, no, this education should be joy-giving. It should be full of excitement and energy and buzz and fun. And it wasn't.
So often in education, we do fake it. We're ticking boxes. We're perpetuating the same cycles. And it's just not sustainable.
That's right. And I think there's a dissonance between action and words. And I think that's really hard for educators and for pupils. And the reason I use the word educators rather than teachers is because for me it's catch-all. It catches, because school leaders are educators, parents are educators. So when I use that phrase very purposefully because it includes everybody. But I think that it's very easy to say we're going to care about growth mindset and the test results don't matter and all of these things. But essentially, they do matter because we're held accountable as educators because of test scores. And so it's how do we make sure that whatever we say, our actions match our words, because that authenticity, I think, is why a lot of children are struggling with school. They read it, they know it, they feel it, they just don't know how to say it. And that shows up in attendance and behaviour and all of those kind of problems that we're faced with that are just getting bigger and bigger. I think it's because we're lacking authenticity in our messaging and our actions.
So do you want to talk a little bit about, how play and creativity really fuels and inspires your work?
Yeah. So I think that one of the biggest hurdles we have is in helping educators to understand or finding ways for educators to feel that creating more playful and more age appropriate and developmentally appropriate educational experiences benefits them as well as the children. And that might sound like a funny place to start because of course we all want what's best for the children. Of course we do. That's exactly what it's about. But what's best for the children is having a happy, thriving, well-valued educator who believes in what they're doing. And what happened quite quickly for me starting What If Education was I realised it's not as simple as just saying we need to play more or we need to be more creative or we need to get more curious. Because what we're coming up against is years and years and years of conditioning that's made educators believe or parents believe that play is subordinate to learning, that it's less than learning and that it isn't as valuable as academic activities. When obviously all the research and evidence shows it's exactly the opposite, but we just have to wait much longer to see the results. And it's that period of time that we need to wait to see the results of how exceptional play is as a way to learn that we just haven't got time for. And so we have to keep pulling up the plant and checking the roots because we are accountable with scores and measures and things that are the opposite of what playful experiences provide. So we have this poor workforce who are swimming upstream if they want to incorporate more playful age-appropriate learning experiences, because what they're going to be asked for is evidence of the opposite. And so what's beneficial to educators is children who are able to pass their phonics tests, children who are able to pass their times multiplication tables, children who do well in their SATs. So that's what's beneficial to educators because that's what they're accountable for. So and it's when I say beneficial to them, it's beneficial in the short term. The wider benefits is a whole other story. But the thing that you're going to be measured on, that your performance is going to be measured on, is the thing that you're going to prioritise, of course, because your reputation and your school's reputation depends upon it. So for me, I think it's not just as easy as saying we need to incorporate play. It's finding ways in which we can help educators to do it in a way that benefits them immediately and the wider benefits, but also in a way that it doesn't force them to swim in the opposite direction to what they're used to doing. And for the last 6 months, 8 months, I've been on an advisory panel for a new resource that's coming soon. It's in a testing process at the moment. It's currently lots of iterations, and it's called the Cool Curriculum. And it's been started by this really wonderful ex-ed teacher, Emma Lurie. And what is really special about this for me is that it is doing those two things. It's going to help educators to find ways to bring in play, make education more age appropriate, more developmentally appropriate, but without feeling like they're going to have to let go of all the other stuff. It marries the two wonderfully together. She's doing an exceptional job and I'm so excited to see where this goes because I think it's going to provide something that's going to make play possible.
making play possible. And the thing is that
Mm.
you talked a lot there about the educator feeling like they can play themselves. I mean, I teach dance and drama and music, so I'm constantly playing. This is my language. And
Yeah.
so, rolling around on the floor and role playing and dressing up and silly voices, and that's where I'm in my element. And the children, they lead me, giving ourselves permission as adults to play and to it
Mm.
that be okay. Educators do not like to be wrong,
Yes. Yeah.
but in play you are.
I love that you said that, because you've triggered a thought for me that I didn't mention in that last bit that's so important, and that is how important culture is in playful environments, and that a fear-based environment plays very, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
But in a trust-based environment that you often get in the subjects that you teach, where you can have a growth mindset, really you can, and the educator can as well. But it creates an environment of trust that allows safe failing, and failing as learning rather than failing as getting something wrong.
Yes.
And so you've summed up for me there exactly why what you do in the subjects you do work so well in a playful way.
A lot of the things that you were saying at the start of the conversation about, coming up against resistance. There's lots of moving parts in education, and it's about how you get those moving parts to move together,
Yes.
but in their own way as well. It's not about one size fits
Mm.
all. It's not about ticking those boxes, is it? What if,
Yeah.
what if this cool curriculum, starts to be embedded and celebrated and championed in schools? What is your hope with that, do you think, as somebody who's on the advisory board?
My hope for that is that we can change the way the education experience looks from start to finish. Because I'm absolutely wholeheartedly believe that if we gave our primary aged children a more developmentally appropriate, more playful, more curiosity inspiring and creative curriculum, then the secondary school experience would be entirely different for the pupils and the educators. And I would still love to see that playfulness and that creativeness carry on. But I think that it's a bit facetious as this, but the reason why I think so many secondary school pupils struggle with their education is because they've been writing essays since they were 5. And doing maths in a way that doesn't inspire them to love maths, but to find maths difficult and challenging, and in a way that makes them feel embarrassed and ashamed when they can't do it quickly and fast enough. And all of this conditioning is then carried into secondary. And for me, secondary educators have such a challenge before those children have even walked through the door. And then there's talking about hope, and a hopeful answer to that is the cool curriculum is very much a primary based resource. But I don't know if you've ever come across Kimberly Olaf Cooper. She is what a woman. And she and her team, Aaron Jay's on her team, and she and her team have started a project called Thrive Now Education. And what they are doing is they are proving how we can change the secondary school model to be much more creative, curious, appropriate for the now, appropriate for the future. And what's brilliant about what they're doing is they're currently doing all the work, but they intend to open source the model at the end of it so that it is free for people to use what they've learned. And it's that proof part that's missing. They're currently working on the proof part and the hard work that's going into that. But it's if you haven't, any listeners haven't had a chance to check out Thrive Now Education,
Yes.
honestly, if you want a dose of inspiration and a feeling of hope, just have a look at what they're doing, because it's possible.
Yeah, we will put all the information, all of the resources, all of the the books and things that you're going to talk about in the show notes today for sure, because I think we're so busy as educators. We're going all day, every day through the timetable, which feels like you're in through one end and out the other. And so it's really refreshing to talk to new people, to read new articles and kind of be introduced to different people who are in this space. Because we do need to stay hopeful. We do.
Yes.
We absolutely do. And I think part and parcel of losing so many amazing educators is because they lose hope, they lose sight, and they feel like they're on their own, and it's isolating. I mean, the thing about the school timetable, I think that could be shaken up massively. Why are we kind of putting into the subjects into lesson times of 50 minutes? I was thinking the other day, because I worked in secondary for about 12 years and now I'm in primary. I mean, something that I love about the primary education system and the experiences I'm having is that it's so much more cross-curricular. I'm very often in with the classroom teacher saying, "What are you exploring today? Fantastic." I'll then walk down the path. Lots of ideas will come and then I'm straight in. Right, I hear you've been doing this. Let's explore this. You don't do that in secondary school as much. So there's no joined up thinking.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think that we're in a very much a space of, well, it's always been done this way. So let's carrying on while society changes beyond all recognition outside the walls. And perhaps, maybe, I don't know whether it did, but in the past, that system worked well. But things evolve and change. And I feel that's what we're struggling with. And that you're totally right. One of the benefits to primary education is freedom and autonomy and choice, because the children are in the same groups with the same teacher who has more. Whereas at secondary, of course, you're moving on to the next lesson with a different teacher, and that brings a whole new set of challenges. That's why we find ourselves a bit stuck, because the education workforce is change fatigued, and to ask a whole set of people who are already experiencing overwhelming workloads, unmanageable in a lot of cases, with intense change fatigue, to start thinking outside the box and come up with different ways of doing things when the accountability measures are going to be the same at the end anyway. That's how we find ourselves stuck in the mud. But I love the idea of asking that, like you just did then, but what if we could think of other ways of doing it, and what other possibilities are there out there? And I'd love to see that we had more space in timetables, absolutely, but space overall to start being able to ask questions that could help us to get out of the mud. And that is the space that doesn't exist at the minute.